Never fear, Jonesy's here. The Utopian coming at you. This is a video response to Jay's August question or contest to tell a funny car story. Well, I don't know how funny it was, but it was pretty serious. It was probably the stupidest thing I've ever done in my life. But anyway, I'm ahead of myself. Housekeeping. Smoking my K. Woody White Briar with a little bit of Fort Worth Supreme. Pretty good stuff from Mark and Amber. I call this my Meerschaum wannabe. I'd sure love to have a Meerschaum one of these days. Anyway, back to the story. (1980). I worked around this area. I was working for a little place that was receiving asparagus. The workers would cut the asparagus and they'd bring it in, and we would weigh and grade it and wash it and ship it out on trucks. There used to be a lot of asparagus growing around here. It grows well in the sand around here. But anyway, this was in 1980. To be exact, May 18th, 1980. I can tell you about it now because I think the statute of limitations is long past. But that's the day Mount St. Helens blew up. And I was working in this asparagus receiving station, just a couple of miles from the Columbia River. About 15 miles and change from where I live now. The house I grew up in. Anyway, I was there and we heard this big boom. It was like a sonic boom on steroids. And I jokingly said, well, the mountain must have blown up, because we knew it was going to blow any time. And we're about 250 plus miles away from St. Helens. Maybe closer to 300 miles away. But the person I was working for said, you couldn't hear it down here. But sure enough, we learned later over the radio that it had indeed blown at that time, and we heard the boom come down the Columbia River. Well, excuse me. I asked my boss if I could run home and get my cameras, because I knew probably later on in the afternoon we were going to have a bit of a cloud come over, ash cloud, and I wanted to film it. And she said, well, okay, if you don't take too long. Now remember, I lived a little over 15 miles away, so it was a little over 30 miles round trip. And let me start out by saying there should be a law that every man has to keep the first car he ever bought. That should just be a law, because later on you'll always say, man, if I only had that car now. Well, I had a 1968 Plymouth VIP. It was the top of the line Plymouth. It wasn't just the regular Fury. The difference was that this one had the plush interior. It had it had electric seats in it. It didn't have the electric windows yet. I'm not sure why, but it was nice. But also it had the 383 engine in it, not the 318. It had the 383. And any of you ever watched stock cars, a 383 Plymouth engine used to be standard for a lot of stock cars. I mean, it's a hot engine. Anyway, I hopped in this car and I took off. And I had that thing floored. Had the speedometer buried at 120 miles an hour. That's all the further the speedometer would go up to. Drove all the way home, slammed it in park, jumped out, ran in, grabbed my camera bags. That couldn't have taken more than 30 seconds to run in and get those. And I took off and went back out the same way at the same speed. Had the speedometer buried again. And I kept track of exactly how long it took me to get down and back, and exactly how many miles. I already kept track of that just for the fun of it. When I was working, I was just curious how far it was out there, down to the 10th of a mile. And I ciphered it up that night. And I used to have the piece of paper. I wish I still had it. I went over that again and again. And in order to do that, to make it that 30 plus miles in the time I did, I would have had to drive consistently 140 miles an hour. I made that 30-mile run in, I think it was just barely 11 minutes. Can't remember exactly. I wish I still had that paper. But I know I was traveling 140 miles an hour. I had to make it in that time. And it's probably the stupidest single thing I've ever done in my life. Not because going 140 miles an hour is necessarily that fast, although it's a pretty good clip. But when you consider this is just a 2-lane blacktop road, county road, you've got farmers coming out on it all the time, you've got farm machinery, slow-moving machinery, you've got animals, you've got cattle. At any time, you could wander out on that road. And I've known more than one person who's racked up a car by hitting a cow, and they were going a lot less than 140 miles an hour. Good Lord had to be watching out for me that day. He must have just cleared the way. Probably shook his head and said, well, if that boy's going to be an idiot, I'll just have to clear the path for him. And I made it. That car went 140 miles an hour, and that was stock. I had never done anything special to it. But it had the 383 engine in it. Man, that thing was fast. I ruined the speedometer. The cable in the speedometer was probably twisted after that. Because every time I drive it, didn't matter if you were going 5 miles an hour or 50 miles an hour, the speedometer needle just went back and forth like this. So it was useless for the rest of the time I had it. But man, I was going flat out. Stupid, stupid, stupid. But at least I'm here to tell you about it today. Anyway, that's my little car story for August, and guess I don't have a lot more to say. This is the Altopian. I'll see you down the road.